Hi, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about philosophical issue of identity and the Ship of Theseus. So, the Ship of Theseus. Suppose you have a ship made out of 100 parts, and at the end of every year, one part is replaced by a perfect duplicate. At the end of 100 years, the ship will be made of wholly new parts. Nevertheless, is it the same ship on year 101 with all new parts as it was at year 0? You've swapped out one part every year, and by year 101, it's totally new. Is it the same ship, or has it become a new ship? And if it isn't the same ship at year 101, on what intervening year did it become a new ship? The Ship of Theseus, which is what this problem is the basic example upon which philosophers use to begin or center a discussion about identity. The original discussion comes from the ancient historian Plutarch, but the origins of the story don't matter. The point is just the issue about identity, which the example nicely illustrates. Here is the idea about identity that the Ship of Theseus is meant to illustrate. So we have this timeline, and we have the major years that might be of interest to us highlighted here. So year 0, it's 100% new parts. Year 1, we've swapped out one part, so it's 99% original. Skip ahead, year 49, it's 51% original, and we cross that threshold of 50%. And by year 51, it's mostly new parts and only 49% original parts. And then by year 99, you've only got one original part left, and then we cross the next threshold where we become, at year 100, a ship that has completely new parts and no original parts from year 0. Has it become a new ship, or is it still the Ship of Theseus? Here's a couple of views you might have. So one view you might have is that it remains the same ship at year 0, year 1, year 49, year 50, year 51, year 99, and then once it crosses the threshold and loses that last original part, then it becomes a new ship. And so if you see on my little diagram here, we have the second ship appearing, right? So if I'm counting the number of ships that have existed in the history of the universe, it's at year 100 when I say, well, there was the original ship and now there's a new ship. Another view you might have is that the threshold is actually at that midpoint, at 50%. Once you have mostly non-original parts, it becomes a new ship, a separate ship from the original Ship of Theseus, and it becomes a new ship that we have to count as the second ship. Another view is that it becomes a new ship at every single time a part is replaced. So at year 1, it's a brand new ship. At year 3, it's a brand new ship. At year 49, it's the 49th new ship. And so if I'm counting the number of ships that have existed in the history of the universe, by year 49, I've got 49 ships I have to count. And lastly, there's the view that you can replace the parts, and so long as you do it gradually, and you're replacing one part every year, it remains the same ship throughout. It remains the same ship once you replace one part, once you replace half the parts, as long as it's gradual per every year. And in fact, once all the original parts are gone, it's still the same ship because it was just one part a year. So the fourth view is there's only one ship in the entire timeline. For reasons I'm not going to really go into, but you might think there's some really good philosophical arguments against the first two views. So the first two views, which I'm blinking back and forth between, right? So the first two views puts a threshold at the 50% mark and at the last line. Why? I mean, part of the reason is that the idea of this 50% threshold is only when I'm thinking of the ship at year 0 and year 100. If I think about the difference between the ship at year 50 and 51, there's only one part different, so they should be the same ship because they're not 50% different. But if they're the same ship, then the year 51 ship is the same as the year 50 ship, and the year 50 ship is the same as year 0 ship, and so they have to be the same ship throughout. This is an argument I think just destroys any sort of threshold view that the threshold isn't a single part. So you could hold the view that it becomes a totally new ship as soon as one part's replaced, but you can't do it at like the 50% mark or the 99% mark. You have to do it at the first part is replaced, and then you can say it becomes a new ship, or you need to hold the view that it remains the same ship throughout, even as you replace parts. One important distinction to have in mind while we talk about identity here is a distinction between qualitative identity and numerical identity. So qualitative identity is the degree in which two supposedly different things have the same qualities in common. Two things with exactly the same qualities would be qualitatively identical. We're not interested in qualitative identity. Qualitative identity is, the degree to which two things are similar, not interesting for our purposes. What we're interested in is numerical identity. Are these two things if I'm counting the number of things that have existed, is this numerically the same thing? Do I need to count? Now, I've replaced a part. Do I now need to count this as a brand new thing? It's the second thing that's existed, another thing that exists in the universe. I'm counting the number of ships that have existed in the history of the universe. Or when I replace a part, does it remain the same ship? And so really, if I'm counting numerically the number of things that have existed or the number of ships that have existed, do I keep just saying, it's the same ship, I don't need to count a new ship? So numerical identity is if you were to count the number of things that exist right now or maybe have always existed, two supposedly different things are numerically identical if you only need to count them once. So on this timeline thing I have here in the first column, you get this sort of new numerical identity at year 100 once you cross that threshold from 1% OG parts to 0 OG parts. The second view, it's that 50% threshold. That's when a new numerically a numerically different ship comes into existence. On the third view, a new numerically different ship comes into existence at every time you replace a part. And then on the fourth view, a new numerically different ship never comes into existence because you're gradually replacing parts, and so it's always the same ship. And if I'm counting the number of ships that have existed, it's just the Ship of Theseus, and replacing parts don't make it a new ship. Why does this matter? This issue matters for a number of reasons, but let's skip to perhaps the most interesting of them. What makes you the same person from time to time, right? So the Ship of Theseus, we're talking about a ship, it's an artifact. Who cares if this is the same ship? We could probably come up with we could have some whatever standards we invent for deciding when ships stay the same and when they don't stay the same. We can make our own laws that have whatever rules we decide on for what counts as the same ship. But when we talk about what keeps you the same person, that matters a lot to responsibility, keeping promises. If you're not the same person later than you were before, you don't have to keep, you're not the one who made the promise. You don't need to keep it. You're not responsible for the bad things that someone has done before. Why are you saving money for a future self if it's not you? Why are you not smoking so numerical identity really starts to matter when we talk about people and what makes us the same over time. And the exact same problem occurs for us as it does for the Ship of Theseus, because both our parts are constantly being replaced. You're eating food so that your cells can regenerate your body. And over time, every bit of material of you gets replaced. So what makes you the same person over time, given that you aren't the same material over time? Similarly, if you think that, I'm not my physical body, I'm this psychological being, this set of character traits and personality and habits, etc., and emotional dispositions, but those change over time too. So again, the same sort of Ship of Theseus question arises, what makes you the same person over time, given that your personality, your psychology changes slowly over time? So here's a couple issues, right? How could you possibly be the same person as some infant? The infant's so different from you now. Why? How am I the same person? Look at a 1-year-old picture of me, and you say, that's Andrew Fife. The same Andrew Fife I know who is 38. What the fuck do I have in common with an infant? Right. That's one issue. How can we hold elderly Nazis responsible for what they did in their youth? Aren't they different people now? And why are you saving money or not smoking for this distant future person? The sake of their health, the sake of their monetary well-being. That person will be so different from you. Why treat them as yourself at all and save money for them? What makes you numerically the same person over time, given that your physical makeup and personality might completely change over the course of your life? Why hold you responsible for your past? Why do you care to save money for this future person, just like she was you yourself, given how different they will be from you? How can so much of our lives assume that we are the same person from infancy to old age, given how radically different we are from one period to the next? These are the questions that philosophers call the topic of personal identity. So generally, when we talk about personal identity, we take this sort of fourth view, the idea that, well, you can replace parts, slowly and you continue to be the same person. But even if you take that view, there's still the question of what we are, because is it that my material matter needs to stay continuous over time, that I need to replace my cells slowly, where if you phaser destroyed me and I got eliminated and you reproduced a clone from different material, that wouldn't be me because you replaced all the parts at once? Or is it more about my psychology, that I would be, if you knocked me over the head, it erased my memories and gave me a total different personality, that might be a totally different person and not me, and I would have died, and now there's a new person occupying my body. But that, as long as it happens gradually, as long as my personality traits swap out slowly once a year, over time, that allows the sort of psychological continuity that keeps me to be the same person numerically same person over time. So here's an illustration. So suppose you're on trial for murder. You decide to represent yourself. You are not the murderer, you say. The murderer was a different person from you. The judge asks for your evidence. Do you have photographs of this mustachioed intruder? Don't your fingerprints match those of the murder weapon? Can you show that the murderer was left-handed? No, you say. Your defense is different. Here are your closing arguments. I concede that the murderer is rightly like me, has the same fingerprints as I do, is clean-shaven like me, not like me. He even looks exactly like me in the surveillance camera photographs introduced by the defense. No, I have no twin. I admit, I remember even committing the murder. But the murderer is not the same person as me, for I have changed. That person's favorite rock band was Led Zeppelin. Now I prefer Todd Rundgren. That person had an appendix. I don't. Mine was removed last week. That person was 25 years old. I'm 30. I am not the same person as that murderer of 5 years ago. Therefore, you cannot punish me, for no one is guilty of a crime committed by someone else. Obviously, no court of law would buy this argument, and yet, what is wrong with it? What remained the same that makes the 30-year-old self the same as the 25-year-old self? That's actually kind of easy, or easier, because 30-year-old and 25 is pretty close. I mean, what makes the 5-year-old self the same as the 80-year-old self? Totally different personalities, totally different material that you're made out of. One possible answer, which you might be tempted to say, is, well, your consciousness, your soul. So let's talk about what the soul is. Talk of the soul is related to three philosophical problems: free will, consciousness, and personal identity. We're only going to talk about personal identity. In other philosophy classes, you might talk about free will, consciousness. Next semester, I'm teaching a whole semester on free will. But when people talk about the soul, they're talking about whatever it is that makes us the same person from time to time, so personal identity, whatever consciousness is, which is its own mystery, and whatever it is that seems to underlie our sense of free will. But talk of our soul isn't an answer. It's just the name for the philosophical problem we're trying to solve. So I named the problem we're trying to solve as the issues of personal identity. When you say, well, these are issues of the soul, that's the same sort of thing. I haven't given you an answer. Saying it's the soul doesn't give you the answer, just like saying it's the personal identity doesn't give you the answer. You have to say what personal identity is. Is it that my physical material stays continuous over time? Is it that my psychology stays continuous over the time? Right? I need to give an answer for what the problem is, and the problem is the problem of personal identity, just like I need to give an answer for, what is the soul, and these are attempts to give those answers. So we cannot simply say that what makes us the same person from time to time is our soul, because soul is just the name for the problem. It isn't an answer. Something makes us the numerically identical same person even as we change over time, and we call that the soul, but that doesn't solve the problem. It just gives the problem a name, just like it's the personal identity that stays the same over time. we still must explain what the soul is. What is personal identity? And we can partially do that by answering the question of what makes us the same person over time as we change. I say partially only because when we talk about the soul, it's sort of ambiguous because you're really talking about three problems. One is consciousness, one is free will, and one is personal identity. So answering what the soul is answering what personal identity is, what makes you the same person over time. Here are three theories of personal identity that philosophers tend to focus on. One is the physical theory of personal identity. Persons A and B, so infant Fife, 25-year-old Fife, or 25-year-old Fife and 80-year-old Fife, persons A and B are numerically identical if and only if they're physically continuous. So in the same way that the Ship of Theseus is the same ship as long as the parts get replaced only once a year, and there's a continuity of the physical body over time and the parts are being replaced slowly as opposed to being destroyed at once and reconstructed all at once, right? As long as there's a gradual replacement of parts, then you remain numerically identical. You might take a different view. You might say no. I'm not like the Ship of Theseus. I'm not a physical object. I'm my psychology. I am my personality, my memories, my emotional dispositions, etc., my complete psychology. But your psychology changes over time too. And so we need a theory of what keeps you the same over time, despite the fact that your psychology changes. Maybe a complete change between 5 years old and 80 years old. So here's a view of the psychological theory of personal identity is persons A and B are numerically identical if and only if they are psychologically continuous. So that your character traits, your emotional dispositions, your memories are replaced, slowly, one by one. And so there's a continuous story between the 5-year-old and the 80-year-old. That's what makes you the same person. There is a continuous psychology that changes over time, but changes slowly, and then that's going to be you. I mean, here's a view that pushes us, or an example that pushes us from the physical view of personal identity to the psychological view of personal identity. So this comes from John Locke's, and it's called Locke's Prince and the Cobbler. Suppose that the citizens are coming to kill a certain prince. In order to escape being killed, the prince has his and a cobbler's brain scanned and then re-scrambled so that in the morning the cobbler's body awakens with all the memories and character traits of the prince, while the prince's body awakens with all the cobbler's memories and the cobbler's character traits. The prince hopes that now, when the angry citizen mob comes, they will kill the cobbler in his body, while he, the prince, gets to continue to live in the cobbler's body. Is the prince correct? Has his personal identity transferred to the cobbler's body? I mean, is this a way to switch bodies? Can I do a body switch in the way that this example illustrates? Locke thinks you can, and he thinks that you can because your identity is about psychological continuity rather than physical continuity. The prince swaps body because if I want to tell the continuous story of the psychology, it's in this one prince's body for a while, and then all of a sudden the story continues over in the cobbler's body, and then the cobbler's psychology swaps to the prince's. So there's no physical continuity, but there is a psychological continuity. And so the Locke's Prince and the Cobbler is supposed to say, if you believe that there really is a swap here, that they do swap bodies, it's not the body continuity that matters, it's the psychological continuity that matters. If you think that, no, what's happened here, the prince is still stays with the prince's body, although now he has the cobbler's memories, then you think it's the physical part, like the physical continuity that matters to keeping you the same person. Here's a third view. It's a hybrid view. Bernard Williams pushes this view. Persons A and B are numerically identical if and only if they are both physically and psychologically continuous. So when you talk about Locke's Prince and the Cobbler, there's a problem. What Locke wants, what the hybrid view wants to say is, when you scramble their brain and scramble his brain and swap their personalities, they both die, and then two new people occupy their bodies, because there is no physical continuity, and you need physical continuity to stay the same person. On top of that, you also need psychological continuity. So if I keep you in the same body, but I knock you over the head and your personality gets scrambled and your memories get scrambled, then you also die in someone. So the hybrid model is both of these things need to stay continuous for you to be the same person. It can't just be one or the other. So we've got three views. One is you're a physical being, kind of like the Ship of Theseus, and you need to have a physically continuous body in order to stay the same person over time. With like parts can be swapped, but it has to be gradual. The other possibility is your body doesn't matter. You are a psychological being. And yes, your psychology changes, but as long as it's gradual, you can stay the same person over time. And lastly is this idea that like, no, you're a physical being and you're a mental being, and both of those things need to stay stable, continuous, in order for you to stay the same person. So that's a real quick summary of the views on personal identity in philosophy. And if you do the reading, it's going to talk a lot about the physical theory of personal identity and the psychological theory of personal identity. It's probably, I don't believe that the Ted Sider piece that I've assigned brings up this hybrid theory, but I think it's an interesting one to also talk about. Bernard Williams is a very important philosopher, and I tend to the psychological theory of personal identity. I leave it up to you guys to think of what you think is correct about what makes you the same person over time.